Okay, so been meaning to do this for a while. Just want to run through the setup of HurricaneVR doing custom hands. So there's some really good documentation, and if you just read through it and walk through each step, you should be okay. But some people prefer videos. I know I do, so I'm just going to do one for myself, just to remember. There is an additional one on in the docs about how to create hand models that are mirrored if you've only got, say, one hand. But I am going to be using this pack from the store, which is useful because it also comes with some ready posed hands, so you can use them. You'll see. I'm also using Animation Preview to make that a little bit easier, the loading in of the clips, and also a play mode save, which saves positions, well, any changes you make in play mode in the Unity editor. So off we go. I've got a new project. I've imported the hand pack and the plugins I mentioned, so Easy Save and Animation Preview, but I haven't done the VR project setup because it's dead easy to do. So click on Install for the XR Plugin Manager. I'm going to be using OpenXR, so I tick this. So yeah, it's going to restart the editor because essentially it's changing the input system. Then you get this validation check. So it's telling you it needs at least one interaction profile. I happen to be using Quest 3, so I'll enable the Oculus Touch controller and then just essentially fix both of those. Let it do its stuff. Just opening the package manager, and I'm going to import HurricaneVR. There it is. Just import everything. I do recommend the tech demo because we're going to actually be using one of its prefabs. So sometimes I've disabled demos from asset imports, but in this case I would recommend importing it. Okay, and you get presented with this pop-up. You want to go into Project Setup, set up the layers, set up the physics settings and the collision matrix, which is all essentially it's to do with what's going on in here. It's just to make sure that the hand doesn't push the player. That's pretty much it, really. You get your play and the hand shouldn't be on the same physics layer. Okay, I'm not using SteamVR and I'm not using the actual Oculus SDK, so I don't need to do any of the other bits. We're done. And you're gonna use, I mentioned the demo, I use as a starter the tech demo OpenXR rig, but there are stuff in there that I don't want to be using. So inside the camera there's head relative inventory, which I don't use the backpack, and I don't use the waist. The rest you can keep. Gonna need a floor, otherwise when we go into play mode we're gonna fall right through. Bring that down, and just for my sanity I'm just gonna pick a material that's a little less bright. Make our icons a little bit smaller so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so the other thing that is important at this stage is the HVR global singleton. That lets the system work. Without it, you won't actually get any of the hand physics working. And at this stage, if I create an empty set up hands, so this will disappear. We're not going to use it for very long. So we want our models, so we're going to replace these ones. And I tend to use the prefabs, use the black ones. Double check. Yeah, so they look a bit weird, but that's okay. We're not there yet. Just going to create animation controller. And a right one. So that's the left. And that's the right. And tools. Now this is Animation Preview Pro. And essentially it's a really easy way of playing clips off a controller. So I've got nothing in the controllers yet, but I can just drop in some of the poses. So left, and then I want the right, and I want the right poses. Close fist. Okay, so you'll see how useful they are. So they now appear because they're in the controller, and I can just literally make them be a open or a fist. So I just make it opened, and I'm just going to move them out of the way a bit. Say, yeah, I'll do. Okay, so now we're ready for the custom hand model helper. This is really helpful wizard. I will just walk you through the process of essentially going from your models to what's already provided in the XR rig. So first thing is it wants to know your models, left and right, and it wants to know where the rig is. Make that a bit bigger. Once you've populated that, you get some more options. It now wants to know what transforms are the left finger parents. So if I open, actually I'll open this completely. You can see each of the fingers. That's the parent. So it's not L hand, it's hand underscore L for this particular model's rig, hand rig. Different ones, depending on where you get them, will have different names, but essentially you want the parent of the fingers themselves. And then you need to make sure that the system knows the order the fingers come in, so index, middle, pinky, ring, thumb. Index, middle, pinky, ring, thumb. Again, depending on the model, that might be different, but the documentation, the HurricaneVR documentation suggests that actually that's pretty standardized. And then in terms of the bones, it's from here how many bones there are, and the end doesn't count as a bone, it is just literally the tip. So you want to count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and that's the same again in this case. It's the same. You might have rigs that have different number of bones, so I don't know, for different fingers, but this is a pretty standard rig, so we're just using 3, and then you just literally click set up, and what it's done on both hands is added tips and a palm. So we'll deal with the palm first. Just zooming in. And what you need to do with the palm, so it needs to be rotated so that the z-axis is pointing outwards from the palm. So in this instance, I'm in global, which is not at all, so let me undo all of that. Because then you'll actually see that's better. And this one's going the other direction. I'm holding down Control to move in those increments. Okay, so just double checking. Yeah, that's fine. So that's the palm. Then we also need to do the fingertips. I'm not entirely sure if you have to change the rotation, but I just generally do just to, and thankfully you don't have to completely rotate it, so you don't, it's not like the palms, they don't have, the z-axis doesn't have to be in the right in the forward direction, but just generally you want it to be at the fingertip like that. And I tend to do one, and then I'll copy the component, paste the values, and if there's been a rotation, for example, it becomes negative on the other side, and similarly because it's being mirrored across, you just change the polarity there, then plus the minus of x, z, and the y rotation. It's just it's a quicker way of doing it rather than doing each one individually. So just going to keep going. So you don't have to go crazy in terms of getting this perfect, but if you get it pretty good, it'll make stages later on down the line just a little bit easier. Sometimes you see it from one angle and it looks right, then you copy it to the other and you realize it's not quite right, and it's worth going back to the other one, just making sure that they're evened out, because these hands are perfectly mirrored. Okay, let's carry on. Okay. Okay, so we've moved all the tips to the ends of the mesh tips, and we've put the palm in the middle of the hand with the z-axis pointing inwards. So then we just working through the wizard, you want to click on detect mirror, and nothing seems to happen, but what you need to do is you just need to check that it's mirroring correctly. So start mirroring, and it creates a clone next to your model, the one that you've been working on, that you can essentially go into and test. So by rotating the bones, making sure that the other side does the same. The thumb is one of the ones that can go wrong, so they recommend that you test that as well. And we're done. So we can stop mirroring. It removes the clone. And we're on to the next stage, which is rig setup. Now before you do that, you might, something I've done in the past, let me go back, is essentially disable these hands that we're replacing. So inside physics right hand and inside physics left hand are the actual original models from the demo. You do need them, keep them in and keep them active. So if you do that, which I've done in the past, and then click on setup rig references, you'll just get errors in the console. It won't work. It requires access. The script requires access to those components on those models, and so if they're deactivated, the script can't get access to the components. So make sure they're enabled, and yeah, just click on set up rig references, and you'll see it's taken what was inside our setup hands, which we don't need anymore, and just put them where they're going to need to be, which is inside physics right hand, physics left hand in the rig. So that's all good. Next stage, pose setup. So we need poses for each of the relaxed, open and closed, which is a fist. There's also kind of a prefab setup, and it's a HurricaneVR settings scriptable object, but just pressing these buttons will do it for you, and clicking the next one creates the hand poser that we're going to use to create the poses. Now as it happens, I can move these back out of the way. So we see things a little bit better. As it happens, we've already got pretty good relaxed hand pose. But we'll preview. So I've clicked right hand preview. You think, oh, well, where is it? But it's actually created up above. And you can check the other side, and that's fine as well. So we're good. We've already got the relaxed hand pose that we need. Save as. It's up to you where you put them. I tend to have them in my own folder, and I'll call that glove relaxed pose. Save. That one's easy. Now if I undo preview on one of them, we need the open pose, which is essentially just this pose, but just with the fingers a little bit extended. So I'm just clicking on each of the balls. Obviously in local mode. So it can be sometimes difficult to select something from behind the gizmos, but you get there eventually. Okay. Right, so that's a good open pose. So we've got the preview of the right hand, and you can preview the left hand, and you can see that it's obviously still got the old pose, but we want to mirror this to left. So right hand is posed, mirror right to left, and now we've got both hands showing the same pose, and we're good to save. So glove open pose, and then finally we need a closed pose, the fist. And again, what we can do is make use of animation preview and pose these hands. I'm just gonna select the poser and just get rid of one of them to make it easier to see. Right preview I want close fist. Just gonna double check. Yeah, there's a bit of clipping, so I'm just gonna yeah, yes, think I'll have to live with that. It's not ideal, but for the sake of a demo, that'll do. So we've got pose on the right. Right is posed. Mirror that to the other side. Now we've got both sides. Save as. Fist. And we don't need the previews anymore. You can keep the poses set up, the hand pose essentially in the scene, because you might do some further poses later down the line, like holding a tool or a weapon or something. What we want to do is go back to the wizard, put in our last pose, which was the one we've just created, the fist. So we did the setup, we did the create hand pose, and now we need just to set up these poses that we've created. So I'm going to click setup, and it tells you it's kind of applying everything. It's actually created prefabs. You can move them where you want. I tend to like to have them in the, like, somewhere that I know where they're going to be. And the next part is doing the, if I zoom back down to where we were, doing the actual colliders on these physics hands. So you can see the original models that come with the demo rig have got colliders. Our model doesn't yet. So I'm on still the finishing off the wizard, hand set up, click on add collider controller. That creates just very basic hand boxes, which we can tweak. Just gonna, so at this stage you can hide them. I think that should be fine. Okay, go with that. Next, you select your model. We're actually done now, having added the collider, so we could, with the wizard, we're done with the wizard, so we can close this tab, and we're also done with animation preview, so we can close that tab. So if you select your model, you notice that the posable hand script has these sort of capsule add. So just go through each one: thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky. Do the same with the other one: thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky. And they all look wrong, but that's okay, because the problem is just the axis direction. So I'm just going to select them all. It defaults to the x-axis. We actually want the y. And that fixes all of that. And then finally, I usually find that they're all pretty good. So if I select the hand, it's pretty much all the joints work, because it's using the bones for the fingers. The only one that can be slightly off, I find, are the fingertips, and it is to do with that positioning of the tip transform that we did at the beginning. So that's why I was saying, actually, if you do it well then at the start, then you have to do less fixing up at the end. But in fact, all I've had to do here is just pull it up a bit, and it partly depends on how much how perfect you want your finger physics to be. I don't think I need to worry too much. It's up to you really how much work you want to do on that kind of stuff. That'll do for me. Okay, so we've positioned colliders, and pretty much at this stage you can get rid of the original hands, except for the fact that the jump now is to make sure that these new hands match your controllers. And a good start is to essentially use the original positioning of the demo gloves. I'll give you kind of a good ballpark figure to start with. So this is going to be pretty hard to do in a YouTube video, just to demo that process, but I can kind of tell you offhand the kind of things I generally do, especially with these hands. I find that these hands are usually a little bit too big. So by these hands I mean the handy hand pack. And I even sometimes kind of stretch them out, not uniformly, but like make them either a bit longer or a bit less thick, if that makes sense. So reduce there. But you can only work that out by actually going into VR. So I'm going to do that now and try to talk through the process as I do it. Essentially, what I'll be holding up my controllers and moving these to match. One of the tricks I do is I put my finger to my wrist, and then I kind of try to position it. So just bear with me while I do that. So it's that kind of motion, and so I can tell that the hand is just a little bit too far forward, so I can just move it back. I find the positioning of the demo ones are just a bit wrong for me as well, so it really is only just a kind of a ballpark figure. So I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So it's something like that, but that's probably too much. Yeah, so I've made that change and I've got both of those selected. So this is where the play mode save comes in. I'm just going to save now so it remembers my change when I come out of play mode. And then I'm going to try again. Now this time I'm actually going to put the headset on so I can do it properly, so bear with me. Yeah, I'm actually feeling pretty good, except of course that I'm still showing the original hands, which I don't want. So left hand model, right hand model, get rid of those. So they're just tiny bit they're just a tiny bit too low. They need to go up. So if that's in the middle of my wrist, and so the hand models just need to go up a touch. So on the y-axis, is that right? I'm changing the wrong one. That's no good. What I want is this one. Okay, so let me double check that. And I'll need to change the other one at the same time. Oh, just a 3, okay. You do want them to match. Okay, I'm just going to put my headset on properly and double check again. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I probably would tweak them some more, but for the demo, that gives you an idea of essentially the process. So again, remember so I made that change. I'm selecting both, right click, save now. It's got a little notification, and then when you stop, it'll save. Okay, so might as well save the scene, and you can now left hand model, right hand, they're the old ones. We can lose them, and then I make whatever changes you generally would decide to do for your own. So I'm a snap turn kind of person. I don't particularly like crouching. And everything else is fine as is. And so gloved hands. And I'll make a prefab variant. That's the one. So our colliders have kind of moved. As I move the hands, they've not followed suit. So I just want to put them back where they belong. Okay. It's worth honestly, it's worth spending the time, and then you'll get much better hand physics later down the line. So apply on my overrides. And you're done. So yeah, really hope that's helpful. That's HurricaneVR custom hand setup.